And you're back. Is my hair distracting? I took off the buff that I was wearing in the last video, and I feel like my hair is rather poofy. So as long as it's not too distracting for you, I will return to reading from chapter 4 of The Day We Said Goodbye, A Meditation on Acceptance by me, Ken LaSalle. Available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. I hope you pick yourself up a copy. So when I last left, Tim was throwing me a second bachelor party in San Diego. Sean and I were sure this one must include naked women, and plenty of them. Why else would Tim be so insistent that I leave town? I was pretty sad that Sean couldn't make it. Sean was something of an expert in prurience. Prurience? Man, there's a word to pronounce. But again, he couldn't just leave his wife, and his devotion to her was inspiring. But not so inspiring that I didn't jump at the chance to bury myself in strippers. Jeff drove me down to San Diego in his big sedan. Jeff is about 6'8", so he needs a big car for his legs alone. I got to stretch out like I could never do in my little Honda. We arrived at Tim's late in the afternoon, met him at the door, and he immediately pulled me aside far from Jeff. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked me. I'm here for the party," I told him. "I don't mean that," he said. He pointed to Jeff. "I mean that." "What?" "You were supposed to come alone," he hissed. "Why?" Then he paused, and I could tell he was thinking, as if trying to find an angle. Finally, he gave up and told me disappointingly, "I was going to bring you to TJ. I wanted to get you laid before your wedding." Okay, that was far more than I expected. I mean, kudos to Tim for thinking outside of the box, but we couldn't do that, Tim. I'm not going to cheat on Vicky, especially not with a Tijuana hooker. All respect to Tijuana hookers. Do you know, or do you have any idea how many diseases each one of them carries? Tim frowned. "I know, but it would have been fun." Yes, it would, I told him. "Thanks." But then Tim was somewhat at a loss and didn't know what to do. Jeff assured him we would find some naked women for me, and I realized I was relying on 2 homosexuals to get me strippers. Oh, this would be interesting. And I knew that wasn't the half of it because Jeff was pulling a joint out of his pocket. "I thought we could get this party started," he explained. Tim had already gotten his own party started. He had obviously been drinking before we arrived. And I knew I'd need help relaxing on the homosexual wild ride this evening was turning into. So I shared the joint, told Tim he couldn't have as much because he had already started by himself, and away we went. Tim was calling us a cab, but we got a preview of where the night was going when Tim began to hit on the driver. The driver spoke with a thick Australian accent, and Tim kept guessing, "You're from New York, right? You sound like you're from Brooklyn?" And the night was just beginning. 2 gays and a straight walk into a bar. We started out at Pacers, thanks to the cabbie's recommendation. It was the kind of bar where you expect them to spit into your drink for you, and they expect a tip for it. The kind of bar where men are men and women are ugly. It was rough and tough, but they do not allow smoking inside, thank you very much. I kept going outside because Tim had discovered women, and I couldn't handle it. Tim, it turned out, was a closet heterosexual, but he wasn't very good at it. He'd sit at the bar and yell, "Oh, yes, dear. You're doing beautifully. Yes, look at the breasts. Just look at them, both of them." One particular dancer past the three of us on stage and bent down low to show us her goods, but the stench from those goods, see, I told you there'd be a little bit more than you wanted to hear, knocked Jeff and me back several feet as Tim complimented, "I love your shoes." It was important to Tim that I get a lap dance, so I picked the type of dancer I like. A petite, demure brunette, or as demure as I could get in a place like that. I don't remember her name, but we talked about my impending marriage, and I found myself drawn in by her perfume and her eyes, and her body was not something I could overlook either. She pointed out another group of friends who had come with blow-up dolls and sexual toys. They were loud and crazy, just getting it out of their system, she told me. I understood, but had spent years getting it out of my system. The world is filled with beautiful women, I told her. Just look at yourself, for instance. But there's only one Vicky. "So you're doing this to humor your friends?" she asked. "Mostly Tim," I said, pointing him out. I don't want him to feel like he let me down. She put a hand on my cheek, this one, and kissed the other side of my face. "You're sweet. Vicky's a lucky woman." "You're right," I told her. "I'll let her know you said that." Of course, telling Vicky that a stripper called her a lucky woman didn't really impress Vicky. If I remember correctly, she was too busy wondering why I hadn't tried to get more out of the lap dance. That's just the way my wife is. Tim wondered the same thing. "It doesn't work like that, Tim," I told him. "They're not prostitutes, and you're not allowed to touch them." "It's like a ride, only they ride you," Jeff explained. "That's right," I agreed, and was curious how Jeff knew that. There was a lot Jeff knew. He was one of those guys who was in his element no matter where he was. For instance, I found Jeff tipping the dancers even though I knew he wasn't getting anything out of the experience. "I can appreciate it from an objective viewpoint," he told me. "They work hard, they do their makeup, some of them even do it well." A stripper came by and Jeff gave her a couple of bills. "Besides," he said, "it's Emily Post. If someone performs a service, it's only good manners to tip them." It was an interesting way of looking at naked women, and it distracted me long enough for Tim to surprise me from another side. He had found what must have been the biggest, sleaziest stripper in the joint and had paid her. She grabbed me and dragged me to a private booth as I shot angry daggers at my friend. She certainly wasn't my type. Hell, she looked like she could beat me up. And she did. Her lap dance, in contrast to the previous girl who had been so sweet, consisted of jumping on me, grinding on me so hard that I was sure it was going to leave bruises. And she kept shouting over the music, "You're loving this, aren't you? Oh, you're loving this!" When the dance was through, I was through. I let Jeff know I wanted to go, but neither of us could find Tim. And this was a problem because Tim had been ingesting alcohol so fast, I had lost track. Nothing was beyond Tim when he was drunk, and I worried that he was doing something stupid. Like hitting on the bouncer. There he was, literally throwing his body against the bouncer with a football player's body. The bouncer, a big black guy, kept pushing Tim away, but I could see him getting angrier and angrier. I wasn't ready to see Tim get laid out yet. Jeff grabbed Tim. I apologized profusely, and we found another cab. I was ready to head home, but for Tim, the party was only starting. Between Jeff and myself, we were able to get the cabbie to suggest a place called Deja Vu, which was entirely ironic because Tim was hitting on the cabbie again. Once in the club, Jeff and I ordered some beers and sat at the bar while Tim did heaven knows what. The dancer before us was performing such an athletic routine that the two of us were transfixed. Unlike the skanky girls of Pacers, all my love to the skanky girls of Pacers, -1, my love to her too. This girl could have easily joined the U.S. Olympic team if only the stripper pole was recognized by the International Olympic Committee. After that impressive display, we found Tim hanging out on the smoker's patio. We watched him engage in deep conversations with the dancers about their love lives. Oh, he wasn't so sober that he wasn't complimenting their acts in the least hetero way. Oh, yes, dear, that's a very nice vagina. It looked like we could actually be coasting toward a very nice end to the evening. And then Tim told me he had purchased an extended private dance with two girls he had seen me eyeing, I'm not a saint, during the night. He said, "If you don't get laid this time, it's your own fault. I've done all I can." I didn't have time to explain once again that it didn't work that way because two very lovely girls were taking my hands and leading me away. I couldn't look back at Tim. I couldn't look at anything but the two girls, one blonde and one brunette. They were like the dreams of a horny young man or even a horny, somewhat middle-aged man. And they took me into the private room filled with the loveliest perfume, and their bodies felt heavenly on mine. Each of them took one of my hands and led them along their naked curves. I was actually very surprised that I wasn't getting sexually excited. "Really?" I asked my penis. "Nothing?" "Are you kidding?" My penis replied. "I am far older and wiser than you give me credit for. I know far better than you what will happen. Even if I did get hard, you'd be a pussy about it, and all of my effort will have been for naught. So who do you think you're kidding?" He was right, of course. Still, it was a bit disappointing. And Tim was pretty damn disappointed too. It turned out he had emptied his bank account for that dance. I didn't want to know how much that meant, and Jeff had seen Tim taking the money out of the ATM and assured me it meant a lot. "I'm getting married in less than a week, Tim. Even if those girls had wanted to do something," and I wouldn't tell Tim this, but I was pretty sure those lovely girls would have agreed to just about a great deal, "I couldn't." "But that's what you're supposed to do at your bachelor party," he said. I gave Tim a reassuring smile. "Thanks, Tim, but not for me." I couldn't wait to see my own Vicky the next day. I returned with a pocket full of $1 bills, ready to live out my stripper fantasy with my own private stripper. Somehow, however, those $30 didn't really impress Vicky, and I learned she wasn't the stripper type. Oh well. We were in full wedding mode now. I had 4 days of work that week, but my employer had another thing coming because I could care less about my job. It wasn't just the impending wedding and vacation that fueled my apathy. I worked for a company called Linksys. You remember them? Which made computer networking gear. I had devoted more than 5 years of heartbreak for very little reward. In fact, my boss had recently assured me that I'd never be more than a technical writer so long as he was there. I had started as a marketing writer, had been promoted to manager of the marketing writers, and then thanks to rumors and folks like my boss, I had taken a steep slide down to technical writer. As my boss said, "As long as I tell you to pump out widgets, you're going to pump out widgets." That only got him fewer and fewer widgets. Our rehearsal dinner was scheduled on Thursday night, September 22nd, 2005, at the Hacienda in Santa Ana, a beautiful venue. where Vicky and I were to be married. Vicky's father, Steve, and I had one last errand to run before dinner, which was picking up our tuxedos. Steve was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. Both of Vicky's parents are terrific. The first time we'd met, I was beside myself with nerves. Parents had never liked me before. Rosa's mother had threatened on several occasions to put a hit out on me with the Mexican mafia. But when Vicky and I sat down with her parents at this little Japanese restaurant in Gardena, her parents did everything to put me at my ease. Vicky's mom, Noriko, kept ordering me beers. When they left, I was all smiles. I was all drunk. It was great to meet you, Steve. It was great to meet you, Noriko. I told them, and I meant it too. It wasn't just the beer talking. When I considered proposing, I figured the best place to do it would be the family restaurant. Vicky's mom owned a Japanese place in Lancaster called Murata. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I thought it would remain in the family for years, and we could return to it year after year, and it would serve as a perpetual reminder of our young love. Okay, that turned out wrong. The restaurant would end up being sold in just a few years, but I didn't know that. When I called Steve and said, I'm considering proposing to Vicky, and I was wondering, the next words out of my mouth were going to be, if I could do it at the restaurant. Steve didn't know this, of course, and he cut me off with this reply. Well, that's very nice of you, but you don't have to ask for our approval. Vicky's smart and you seem like a nice guy, so of course you have our blessings. I'm not usually very comfortable around men, having grown up among women, my mom, Audrey, and Keith. It's a low blow, but I like the joke. But Steve always has this very casual manner, very laid back, so it's hard to get nervous around him. We went to pick up our tuxes and found that his hadn't been sized correctly. Can you believe this? He asked. Can you believe this? And I found myself in the position to help my future father-in-law, which I took for a coup. You can never score enough points with the in-laws, I always say. The thing is, they'd given him the wrong size vest. I asked the salesman if they could get a vest one size bigger, and it worked out fine. But as we drove together to our rehearsal dinner, I began to feel terribly guilty. Rosa might have had her faults, but I helped end that marriage just as much as she did. What right did I have to marry again? Maybe Rosa was right in finding someone who could never really love her back. Maybe I deserved the same kind of treatment. Vicky deserved better than me. Her family deserved better than me. I began putting the words together in my head, ready to tell my future father-in-law what a louse I was before we went to the rehearsal dinner prior to my marrying his daughter. I don't always have the best timing. But then we arrived at the hacienda, and it was too late for any full disclosure, which was probably a good thing. Inside the restaurant, family and friends greeted us with smiles. The hacienda had laid out an indoor... The hacienda is laid out with an indoor restaurant and a huge patio, a beautiful garden where love and happiness abounds, one can only hope. I'm sure it is carefully maintained just for that effect. Vicky was off to one side working out some final details. My groomsmen were by the bar, of course. My mom was smiling at me next to her ever surly husband. Vicky and I prayed he wouldn't embarrass us. And then I saw my dad and Blanche. I wasn't sure if they would make it to the rehearsal dinner, coming from out of town as they were, but there they were. They had moved to Arizona for my dad's health. The arthritis in his back had brought him all kinds of problems, and he just needed and he had needed a couple of surgeries. We're almost to the end, and I'm getting tired. I remember blocking out any description of his surgeries as soon as I heard the word fused. But he seemed to benefit from the hot, dry climate. As bad as he had been when they moved from Washington State, now my father was helping but now my father was walking with just the help of a small cane. As it turned out, the rehearsal was a breeze. Our officiate, a dynamic woman named Gail, walked us through everything with no stress and an incredible sense of grace. It was almost like getting married right there. Then we went to dinner. We had our concerns about dinner, of course. Tim had come with his boyfriend, Axel, and worried that my dad might not accept their lifestyle. So they pretended to just be buddies. But I don't think my dad was fooled for an instant. By the way, they didn't consult me on that. They sprung that on me at the moment, at the time, and I was confused pretty much the entire evening. And now I lost my place. Okay, Sean had come with Megan, and we were all watching for her telltale cough, afraid she'd have to leave early. Weak as she may have been, she made it through the entire evening. Then, too, Vicky's maids of honor were all so dynamic we thought they'd steal the show, so to speak. We were worried that the two sides of the wedding party wouldn't talk to each other, or that the two sides of my family wouldn't get along, or that... Who were the we I keep talking about? I suppose I should come clean. I shouldn't. When I say we, I mean me. I'm sure I was the only one who was worried, but I need not have been. Everything was amazing. Dinner ended and everyone rose for a more complete tour of the facility. Facility, that's the wrong word. Property. I took the rather sizable check and gave it a look over. When I say it was sizable, I don't just mean expensive. The darn thing rolled out like a royal decree. Suddenly, I could hear the thud-thud of my father's cane beside me. He reached down and snatched the check out of my hand. I had been about to sign it. "I'm going to get this," he told me. "You don't have to," I told him. There were items in the wedding that were absolutely my duty, and picking up the check at the rehearsal dinner was one of them. I'd saved up enough money to cover it and was even looking forward to it in a way. But then I realized I should have expected this. My dad has always been a pick up the check kind of guy. That's how he shows he cares, you know. For him, it's easier than talking, which as a writer, I don't understand at all. But this time, he did more than just get the check. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, "Of course I'm going to. I love you. I love you." When I tell you that my father had never said those words to me before, I mean never. Oh, there might have been times when he said it and I didn't hear. These words may have come out of his lips when I wasn't around, but he had never once said them to me, directly to me, looking me straight in the eye. I hadn't realized until that moment how desperate I had been to hear those words, how thirsty for them I had grown over so many years. I mean, I was a 39-year-old man. I should have been beyond that. But when my dad said them, when he said he loved me, everything in the world stopped. And I thought, remember this. Remember this because you never know when this is going to happen again. Then, having dropped that bomb, he just walked out without another word and got the check. And that's the end of the chapter. I can't believe it went that quickly, or for that matter, that well. I thought I would have to comment on a lot more things. My bachelor parties are one of my favorite memories, as is my dad's first time saying that he loved me. That was crazy. And as you know, just a few years after that, he would pass away. So, that's it for today's reading. The next chapter is chapter 5, The Day My Father Died, August 9th, 2008. And I'll be reading that when I get back with the next chapter. Until then, this has been The Day We Said Goodbye, a meditation on acceptance by Ken LaSalle. I hope you pick up a copy, an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. And that's it. Thanks for coming around, and I hope you subscribe, click the like button, and connect with me on all that social media business on the screen.